Good evening, one and all. On behalf of the Global Forum for Young Philosophers, GFYP, I invite all of you to this August presentation today. We have the December seminar webinar presentation for the day. Today's session will be chaired by Professor Shrikala M. Nair, the Director of International School of Sri Sankaracharya Studies, Kaladi. Professor Shrikala is also the founding patron of GFYP. It is her vision and commitment to the development of philosophy which guides GFYP to take up programs like the one we are participating in today. Hearty welcome to you, ma'am. Professor Shrikala has also kindly accepted our request to introduce today's speaker and the theme. Without any further delay, can I please invite Professor Shrikala to introduce today's speaker and the theme?
Thank you very much, my good friend, Mr. Bhupesh Goyal. Good evening to one and all. At the outset, let me greet you all a belated though Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. May this coming year, 2024, be an year full of activities that are of interest to us, that take our discipline to the higher pedestals. And may the Global Forum for Young Philosophers inspire you better to aspire more, young as you are, to climb to the higher pedestals in your professional as well as academic life. To those who are joining, like Dr. Tandon, who is the chief guest of our day, the speaker, those who haven't joined this forum, this is a collective of young and aspiring professionals in philosophy, those who are already entered into the profession, as well as the aspiring ones, I mean, the researchers. The prime motto of this forum is to train, mold, provide the young philosophers a platform to share their ideas, uh, to examine, cross-verify the validity of their theories, and so on and so forth, and also to get familiarized with the theories of the masters across the world. Now, this evening, we have an eminent speaker who is too well known in the academic circle, Dr. Alok Tandon. Uh, I am in a dilemma whether to introduce Dr. Tandon or not, but nevertheless, I think I will do that as the my young friend Mr. Goyal has entrusted that responsibility onto me. First and foremost, Dr. Tandon, whom I fondly call Alok Ji, is known to me for past three decades. Uh, to introduce him formally to this forum, he is an independent researcher. I'll speak more about that. Known for his rational and inquisitive spirit, as well as for his passion for the discipline. After doing his PhD in philosophy, he was a recipient of ICSSR General Fellowship for his project Religion in Violence and ICPR Resident and Project Fellowship as well. He was honored with Akhil Bharatiya Darshan Parishad Nagar Award for his contribution to the field of philosophy. Recently, those who have participated in the last Indian Philosophical Congress would have seen him uh, bagging the Best Book Award for the year. Congratulations, Alok ji, for that. Uh, to continue with his resume, he has participated in more than 100 seminars or conferences and published more than 50 papers in national and international journals of repute. He is a vibrant speaker too. His major interests lie in the field of ethics and social philosophy and has, to his credit, four books, one in English, that is Man and His Destiny, and three are in Hindi. And now let me introduce that Alokji who is familiar to me. As I have said, I know him for past three decades. It's an irony that Dr. Tenton is the philosopher among non-philosopher. He comes from a non-philosophy background, but he is a philosopher. And the irony is greater that he is the best among philosophers despite being a professionally a non-philosopher. This is the irony with Dr. Tandon. To be an independent researcher brings great privileges. As I see him, often I grow jealous. Along with many others, many have shared this view because you don't have to, get committed to any agency or an institution. You can freely deliver your thoughts and not to be consistent, not to be committed to an institution, to any school of thought, so on and so forth. That indeed is what Dr. Tenton is, as I have known him during this past three decades. As I have said, this long companionship with him, or the acquaintance that I've had with him, during this time, he has engaged me the brief conversations that we have had during the conferences, particularly when we go. I have organized several conferences in the academic center, Lucknow. These days, we barely have anything. I do not know. Dr. Tandon should tell us uh, whether something is happening in the academic center currently. Uh, but in the yesteryears, when that center was busy with activities, I myself have organized several conferences to which Dr. Tandon has kindly participated. And he used to engage me in philosophy. And as you all know, though these days I do everything, uh, but during my young professional days, I never used to touch anything other than epistemology. And even during last IPC, when that sectional president assignment was quickly handed over to me and I was to make a presentation, he was trying to engage conversation with me, though we could not build the argument much as I was pulled for some other administrative work. As you all know, he has written widely, and I have already introduced the works that he has written. He's a committed researcher in cultural identity. And today he has chosen a topic which is of great interest. As I disseminated this flyer, many have commented that this is a very interesting topic: globalization and cultural identity, or cultural identity in the vicinity of globalization. Friends, you all know Zen's industrial revolution. This identity, that was the first time the identity emerged as a crisis or a philosophical problem. And during the colonial rule, it trickled down to India along with modernity. And the whole thing generates when the villagers get migrated to the metro cities as part of industrialization. And there you have the identity crisis begin. Lot has been written on this: Taylor, Akil Bilgrami, several of them. It's not my area, though I do have penned one or two papers on this. Post-World Wars have witnessed another kind of identity crisis where there were political refugees who were distinguished from the natives. So you have the nation and you have your citizens, and these refugees were segregated from the citizens. So you have the self and the other. The self represents the natives who have the citizenship, who belong to the nation, and the other, the migrants, the refugees. And this problem continues, particularly from in several of the European countries and in some parts of Asia. As far as India is concerned, we have a type of identity issues that emerged in different phases down the history when the Muslim ruled, and subsequently the colonial masters came with their uh, virtues of modernity. We have had different types of identity. And as you all know, much before Canada or Australia emerged as a multicultural nation, India has had all types of multi living. We were multilingual, multi religious, with different ethnicities and also culture. So I'm sure anybody who wants to, as a matter of fact, every country currently have every country currently has a multicultural living. We cannot claim that any European country have only purely European citizens as their I mean, people who live over there. So they will have to confront this issue of cultural identity. As far as India is concerned, we have had different problems. You know, today cultural identity has become, it has different colors in different regions. In the northeast, it takes another color. In the south, it has a different color. In the north, with a lot of the central India from where Alokji and all come, where a lot of politics happen, it has a different color. So so these different colors with which the issue addresses as Indians are concerned, I think Dr. Tandon is going to look at the whole problem from the glass of globalization. How cultural identity emerges as a philosophical problem in the vicinity of globalization. Uh, we are all aware, I'm sure a lot has been written on this issue. Akhil Bilgrami, I'm one of the huge fan of Akhil Bilgrami, who writes beautifully on the cultural enchantment along with Taylor, uh, where he worries about the kind of secularism that India subscribes to, despite being a Marxian. He wonders why we haven't come up with a type of Indianized version of secularism instead of the European model, which suit the least the country. Well, these are some of my stray thoughts on cultural identity. There is a lot. I mean, you can start the discussion from any point, as a matter of fact, and develop. As you develop your argument, the surprising thing is that it would go to address almost every field that I have already referred to. So it is the approach, the starting point that one would choose, I suppose. With these few words, I am extremely happy to have Alokji in this forum. I do not know whether I could bring Alokji to Kaladi. Have you ever been to Kaladi, Alokji? Unmute yourself.
Once you invited me for that multiculturalism
You could
seminar,
not make it.
which
You could not make
could not come.
Mm, that's it. Yeah. I don't remember you having been here. Uh,
I have
so,
not been there. You invited me, but I could not make it.
yeah,
That
that's
was
it.
that.
Oh, here we have a wonderful opportunity to listen to an independent researcher, as I said, who's not committed to anything other than his own reason and his own ideas to which he has subscribed to. Welcome, Aloj T, to this forum, and I also let me have the pleasure to welcome all. Mahesh Venkatram and my good friend Azia and several others who have joined us for. I look forward for a good discussion. Thank you, Alok ji, for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Should I start?
No, you're quite good as you sit.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind words and for inviting me to give a talk on this a very, very relevant issue uh, on which everybody has got a take. And I am quite happy that I am addressing to this forum of young scholars, global forum of young scholars. So this is global as well as young. So I look forward to a good discussion from our youngsters, which is sometimes lacking in all these lectures these days. So that interaction is very much welcome. Whatever I will say, I hope that it will lead to some sort of thought-provoking questions, which will help me as well as the listeners. So let me start first with the challenge globalization is posing to the cultures. The challenge is that the traditional cultural societies or traditional cultures, they feel that this is rather a threat to their existence. It is true or not, we will discuss later. Then there is another challenge that it may lead to some sort of uh, dominance of the Western culture of European or American type. And this can again be termed as a sort of cultural imperialism. It is not colonialism, direct imposition, but it is maybe a sort of cultural imperialism. But some people may think that this is not the case. The globalization process is leading to a sort of development of a global culture, and this may be the future of the humanity culturally. And we have also seen some of the processes where the local cultural practices and their artifacts and people, they find some opportunities to mm, to project and to sell and to come out with their own cultural things and share it with whole world. So this way it seems that this process is not one way process. But before I try to answer these questions, uh, as Shekalaji has said, there is another issue also, and that is also very important, that globalization has led to the culture seeing an eye to eye to each other. Different cultural societies, cultural communities, people, they come into contact face to face, and there comes a problem of negotiating with cultural others. And we know that there are various strategies proposed for that. We will also try to have a look at them. They may be the assimilationism, multiculturalism, interculturalism, and transculturalism. So, first, I will be more uh, concerned about the sociological aspect, you can say, the factual way globalization is influencing the cultural processes of the different national communities. And in the second part, I will try to be a little normative inquiry into the evaluation of the strategies for the mm, for resolving the conflict between the various identities or self and the other. So before doing that, let us say a few introductory words about the globalization as well as culture, because unless and until we understand these two notions, and the whole debate will not get a basis. So we know that globalization is a culmination of a logical culmination of modernity, but it is it goes beyond that. As an economic process, we know that globalization has led to uh, the production, distribution, consumption. This has all gone uh, beyond national boundaries, and those uh, those new uh, information and communication technologies have led to a sort of global village, and a fast communication has led to the uh, loosening of local bonds. People are not uprooted, but we are not dependent upon the the old style of face-to-face relationships. As we see that this is for, as an example, that I am sitting 2,000 kilometers away from Kanadi, and still I am interacting with you people. So this way, the globalization has led to loosening of the uh, old roots. They are not uprooted, but it has led to loosening of the roots. The basics, the basic underlining thing is, as Harvey has pointed out, that globalization process is the compression of space and time, and this compression of space and time has led to many new uh, things in the context, and that's also created a expansion of the our experiences, as well as deepening of the experiences. Expansion in the sense that if something happens in one part of the world, it within seconds can be communicated to other part of the world, as well as the power to infiltrate or to do something for that is also has increased, and this way the whole world has become very well connected. So the before before I go further, I must also point out that this globalization is uh, is the is the process of global capitalism, and global capitalism is nowadays run not by one country; it is run by the multinational corporations, and these corporations work on the basis of profit, and for the profit they have tried to build a world market in which the production, distribution, consumption, these have all become global, and nation states have given them permission for that, and in a way facilitated the formation of open markets. But this open market has led to the consumer culture, in a sense that many things which were not previously commodified, now they are available for sale and purchase, and people are expected to be good consumers, and the whole identity of human being is in risk of being becoming a consumer identity only. And once this happens, then it can lead to some sort of cultural homogeneity, and other things may get lower priorities. So we can see even today that those middle class persons who have got some extra money, they most of the time try to go to the malls and purchase so many things which are not uh, um, needed that much, but because they are being uh, created by or their needs are being artificially created by the multinational corporations, by advertisement, by propaganda, and this way they control the psyche of the people and make them more or more consumers only. So this sort of globalization is a sort of asymmetrical globalization. And this asymmetrical globalization, though has got some possibilities, but it has got many negative effects also. And unless and until this asymmetry is 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 given some sort of some sort of alternative sort of globalization comes, we face the risk and the challenges of being controlled by this sort of um, globalization undergoing all over the world. So why we that is the that is behind the reactions we are facing to this sort of globalization, especially in West Asia, in Southeast Asia, in South Asia, uh, that this is all perceived as a threat to the cultural identity. Now the question comes that what is behind this all this. So, as Professor Nair was pointing out, that with the advent of modernity, the identity became a subject of construction, and it became a project also. Slowly and slowly, in globalization, in what happened that a person living in a village goes out for his living either to the big cities, or city people go to migrate to the other countries, developed countries. So what happens? A double destabilization takes place. Not only he is physically uprooted from his native place where he had got some sort of community, his beliefs, as well as his own style of living in the that community, that is all gone, and his own psychological also he feels alienated. His beliefs and his mm, all the things which used to lead to him to uh, lead a good life in his own way are taken away from him, and this way he feels the identity crisis. And this for the to get a secure basis, to get his identity back, what happens that he tries to catch his old religious, uh, tribal, caste identity and hold them very strongly so that he may get some sort of control over his life. Because as Manuel Cassels has pointed out, that since uh, one loses control over the economic and political processes which surround and control the person, he is bound to go to the old family and caste and religious uh, organizations and identities, and this type of collective identity helps him to cope with the identity crisis he is facing. Now, what happens that he comes out of that identity crisis in this manner, but he is again caught in the quagmire of sometimes what we call revivalism or fundamentalism or religious terrorism. These type of things are uh, are automatically comes along with his coping mechanism of identity crisis. So here we must say that this how it happens. So for this purpose, we have a very good book written by Professor Amartya Sen, uh, around 2006 or something, that was Identity and Violence. So this all happens according to him because uh, people or we, in a sense, accept a sort of master identity, a sort of pure identity. And this what happens when we hold very strongly such identities. This leads to the the conflict with other identities, not identities of the others. And this is the negation of the rational choice and rational criticism which we can do to our identifying processes and our native cultures. But the thing is, we cannot say that identity has got no benefits. It has got many good things also. Yeah, a person who has got some identity, some social and cultural identity, he feels very much confident, and he is also feels that his life has a purpose. That cultural identity gives him an aim and a way to lead a good life. But when such identities are strictly and taken up, and the groups are which to which he person belongs, they become very very strong, and for the cohesiveness and for the unity of the group, this leads to some sort of negation, some sort of opposition to other groups, and this leads to violence. So the whole idea of cultural identity is somewhat ambiguous. And now, what Sane proposes is that uh, to avoid such type of violent conflicts, what should we do? That we should accept that we have got multiple identities. According to context, we live our identities. Once we go to a temple, we are the devotees. When we go to office, we are the boss, office workers. When we go to market, we are the consumers, purchasers. So the context decide which identity is to be played at what time, and we should negotiate these identities rationally according to the priorities of the context. But here he says that a cultural identity is not our destiny, and we have got cultural freedom also. And by this, using this type of cultural freedom, we can intervene, we can negotiate the other identities, and our own identities can be put to the critical testation also. But here comes a question that why such identities, the identities of religious, caste, family, have become so powerfully effective in the context of globalization. And can we say that all identities have got the equal status, equal appeal? So here I would like to differ with Professor Marsain's view, and that our identity can be contextually negotiated as freely as he thinks. Because I find, and we always see, that in the case of some sort of crisis, or in case of some conflicts, what happens that our old identities of caste, religion, and these tribal identities, they become more forceful, and they have got roots in the unconscious of the people. And this way, they are caught up in these identities, and a very limited freedom is allowed to them, in the sense that, for example, you can take a case of a communal right. You may say that I do not belong to any community, but you are not what you think yourself to be. You are also what others thinks about you. And in this manner, you can be slaughtered, you can be murdered just by being recognized as a person belonging to the other uh, community. So this way, the whole idea of rationally negotiating identities is very, very problematic. Now, because of this only, you might have heard about the uh, few decades back, I think in 90s, Samuel Huntington came out with a thesis that the next world war or next conflicting area will be the conflict between the civilizations, the cultural civilizations. And this we are seeing today. He talked about the mm, followers of Islam, followers of Christianity. He pointed out certain 6 or 7 civilizations, and he projected the whole conflicting atmosphere which is likely to come. And now we can see what is happening in West Asia somewhat makes his predictions true. And the terrorist violence, terrorist religious violence is also is can be said to be a part of this sort of identity conflicts. The issue now is that that how the societies, the communities are reacting to this sort of threat. And here we find that the reactions are of 3, 4 types. One we all know, that the first one is, or the first and second one we can club together, and they are the fundamentalist reaction, as well as the you can say revivalist reaction. And this leads people to go back to their cultural, what they call, roots, and they think that our their culture is somewhat glorified, sacrosanct, and that is uh, given somewhere in the past. And should be uh, this should be, maybe may not have been true, but this mythological understanding of culture is supreme, and they try to build a defense against globalization on this basis. But the question is, can this way we can defend the cultural identity, and what will happen? Take the example of opposing the beauty contest on the basis of, on the argument of that it leads to some sort of uh, uh, exposure of body for the consumption of the males and all that. But can we give an alternative to this sort of practice to support the patriarchal assumptions and patriarchal social practices of the past? So the choice between the McDonald culture as well as jihad is somewhat very, you can see they are uh, uh, opposed to each other, very much opposed to each other, and people are caught in some sort of a traditionalism, and which is very uh, illiberal uh, perspective, as well as the most liberal societies of the West, who practice a sort of mm, open and consumption and practices. So again, we see another type of this reaction, and that reaction is which comes in the form of aggressive nationalism. We know that this nationalism, at the time of fighting against the colonial rulers was very beneficial, and it gave a sort of uh, emotional unity as well as an agenda for future. And uh, in this way, this nationalism helped us to liberate ourselves, and as well as to protect the boundaries of the nation. But as we know that this historical uh, activity, this historical contribution of nationalism is very much questionable, because in the Second World War, this aggressive nationalism, which was practiced in Germany and Italy, that led to a sort of fascist dictatorship. And ultimately, it was the Holocaust and the killing of millions of Yahudis. So, this sort of aggressive nationalism, this reaction we are seeing in many parts of the world again, but I feel that it has lost its historical relevance now. And this sort of aggressive nationalism, if practiced, may lead to a sort of mm, massacre of the uh, minorities in these countries on the pretext of um, national unity. And this way, this all the uh, liberal freedoms and whatever we earn from the enlightenment, we learn from the enlightenment, and what we have, have aimed in our constitutions, this is all comes under threat. So this may lead to some sort of, in fighting against the external colonialism, this may lead to some sort of internal colonialism, where the in the name of protecting the um, glorified culture of the past and protecting the nation, we can it can lead us to the a sort of dictatorship where human rights and freedoms are under threat. There is another type of reaction we can see, and that reaction is slowly and slowly gaining ground. And that reaction is that of hybridization. And we see that this sort of hybridization uh, on the surface level very much visible. We are having foods from different backgrounds, different countries, and also the clothings, and also the entertainment, the popular culture things. They are all being shared among the people, irrespective of from where they are coming from. And especially the immigrant population is also very much willing to accept all these things. So, in a way, we see the strict identity is losing its hold on people, and people are willing to share their cultural practices and try to understand others' cultural practices also, though this is not perfect and complete. But here we know that instead of globalization, a sort of localization is taking place, where local things, practices are coming out. And as we can see, even in India, which has got a lot of diversity, a lot of diverse food practices. In our younger days, the South Indian dishes were not very popular in our part of North India, but now they are part of our regular cuisine. So this way, at the large world level, we know our children, they are opting for fishta and all these western dishes also. So this way, we see a sort of what we call creolization is a word. And this hybridization, one should not think that it is a new thing, though though it has got great speed because of the globalization. But in the past also, and especially even at the philosophical level, we can see that Hindu religion and Islam, they came together and came a synthesis of Sufism. And also we can see in our modern times when Buddhism and modernity came together in the form of Ambedkar's Navyan Buddhism. So this mixing of cultural cultures is not a new thing, but the scope, the speed with which it is now taking place is somewhat, you can say, a new response to the uh, globalization process. And it is available to every person individually, even at the village level, at the city level, as well as the national level. So this way we find that the two three types of these three four types of these responses, they can be taken together, and we find that this whole reaction can be seen in three perspectives. One is the you can say sort of uh, homogenization. Second perspective is of separation, that is differentiation between the cultures. And this third one is of mixing. So when we go further and find out that the question of this mixing in this globalization process, which is asymmetrical, the question naturally comes that are the practices, cultural practices, are being shared uh, equitably, or is it again a process of dominance of the Western culture? So this question is very very important, because the developed and the powerful countries and their multinational corporations, they come out with their own agenda of dominating not only the market but also the cultural scene, so that uh, uh, though they give representation to the local artisans and artists, uh, but overall that the direction of the culture is somewhat dominated by the consumerism. And in that process the whole art and cultural things become the commodified, and they become commodities to be purchased, sold, and consumed. So in this way we find that this has to be registered to keep our own we can say cultural identities in a way not to be uh, uh, totally dominated by the Western multinational and globalization processes. But the thing is that can we fight, can we resist this whole threat and challenge by going back by our traditional cultural practices? The question is very, very important, because once we accept the the old notion of culture and think that this is somewhat very pure, sacrosanct, and try to bring it out in defense and fight against the this onslaught of Western culture. But the thing is, and I have forgotten to discuss about the notion of culture, which I will take up a little later. But this whole idea of um, going back, first of all, it is not possible. Second, the unity to resist and to convert this sort of asymmetrical globalization is to be based on futuristic agenda. And this futuristic agenda should include in its program the enlightened values also. And these enlightened values may or may not be the part of the ancient culture of countries like India and other old civilizations. So here we find a lot of a tension there. So if we try to build our resistance on the basis of some glorified past culture, that may lead to a sort of you can say an artificial understanding of cultural processes and neglect of what is happening throughout the world. And this way, what we need today is to look at the notion of culture in a different manner. Here, I would like to say that we can see the notion of culture in two ways. Culture can be seen as a sort of what we call, or what Amar Sen has called, a discovery view of culture. When we think that it is kept somewhere in the past in a closed box, and we have to it is very pure, uncontaminated, and we have to go back and just discover it for our purposes. So this is called the discovery view of culture. Again, the another perspective which has come slowly and slowly emerged, and now it is more acceptable, and that is the historical view of culture. That is the view that cultures are historical constructs. They change, and they have got influence of outside, and they have got inner contradictions also, and meeting both sides of challenges, inner and outer, they develop, and slowly cultures no longer remain what they were in the past. So this sort of understanding of culture, which is more prevalent, more acceptable, and more relevant for the understanding of the globalizational processes today, should be accepted. And with this acceptance, it becomes very easy for us to understand the fourth reaction, which is the hybridization process, and understand how this type of processes, historical processes, continue throughout history, not only in India, outside also, and we can go with this sort of understanding of culture, in which we see that culture is not only what we is not what we live by, it is also what we live for. So this is a very futuristic idea of cultural identity, and this is this can lead us to uh, negotiate and to have a sort of criteria. I develop a criteria of judging what is to be accepted, what is not to be accepted, which forms of our past are to be critically examined and left behind, and which part of the uh, outside influences are to be accepted or not to be accepted. Because, and I don't remember, but there is a very fine shloka in Kalidas, where he says everything old is not good, and everything new is also not bad. Yes.
Puranamityeti na sadhu sarvam.
Yeah. That I have written, and this sort of understanding, this insightful understanding, even I find in Gandhi. Gandhi said everything ancient is not worth keeping, and it is good to swim in the waters of tradition, but sink in them is suicide. So we have to keep all our windows open and keep our feet on the ground, and there with with, with discussion discretion, with our ability to rationally judge, we can negotiate this whole globalizational and cultural relationship, the threat as well as the possibilities which globalization has produced before culture. So now I come to the another problem: how to develop a sort of institutional model for the purpose of uh, living together with different identities and not conflicting um, violently. So, uh, how much time do I have?
You can, what is the time now? Probably you can go up to 7:05. Now it is 6:58. Now
Okay,
the,
only 5-10 minutes I will
yeah.
take. So, in short, I am not going to go into much details, but we, uh, we can discuss some of the models which have been suggested for this negotiation, for resolving this problem of cultural conflict. And these are the I said in the beginning: assimilationism, multiculturalism, interculturalism, and transculturalism. So, as we know, assimilationism a, is is a new version of the old melting pot theory, and which was very much thought to be an ideal condition for the America, and where most of the people were coming from the migrants. They were either coming from Europe or from Asia, and it was supposed just like a melting pot. They will slowly and slowly they will they will melt their identities and create a some sort of American identity, and this way the problem will be resolved. But that has not happened, and this old identities, people go there for earning living, money, wealth, but they want to keep their old identities intact. This way, the and other problem is also there, that those who were in majority, or the white people, they just tried to dominate the others, and this created a sort of racial, uh, you can say, suppression of other minorities. The threat was there. So in a way, it seemed that it will be successful in the beginning, but it ultimately could not. And this was found that in the second or third generation people, this suddenly came as a protest in a younger generation. So it was thought to be, it was rejected. But again, there was another model, another version of this assimilationism, which was based on the very thin view of human nature, the view that we all share the consciousness, and on the basis of that, we can have uh, on the basis of that same consciousness and the idea of human rights, citizenship, we can build a, a composite, a uniform, unified uh, assimilationist identity of the nation. But this is also very problematic, and we know that human beings do not live by any thin identity. They always need a thick identity. And also, this is based on some sort of universal man, some sort of nowhere, a cosmic exile uh, is expected, which is not available. So in a way, this sort of this model was very much problematic, and it was rejected. Second model is, we all know, it is of multiculturalism, which was very popular, very fashionable few years back, and Canada, America, Australia, and some practices of that was also um, taken up by Britain, USA, etc., to accept the difference of identities and to give them protection, to give minorities a sort of uh, representation, and and to protect themselves from the protect their own cultures from the other majority communities. So this way, many laws were passed, and somewhat it was thought that now it is the ultimate, and this will lead to the solution. But in short, I can say a vast literature emerged, and it was critiqued from various angles. But I will only try to pinpoint one or two criticisms. One is that multiculturalism could not lead to a sort of social cohesion. So national unity was always problematic. I have read British Prime Minister saying that this made some sort of uh, acceptance of the uh, policies of the country or the national policies very much problematic. People were not very enthusiastic about that. Another thing was that with giving culture so much importance, what happened? The whole discourse of social justice got went into the background. So leftists also criticized it. Again, there was a big problem that once cultural communities got their representation, there came their elite groups dominated, they became more powerful, and they again exploited the weaker sections of their own cultural communities. So this way, internal contradiction was very much there, but there was no way to address that. It was seen in the case of women also. Again, as a very well known multicultural thinker, Will Kimlicka, in his very first page I have read, he said there are certain conflicts among various cultural communities which cannot be settled rationally. It is very difficult to settle them, educate them. So we need a sort of, um, you can say, an alternative platform to negotiate this sort of conflicts. Multiculturalism itself does not have a recourse to that. Here we must also make a distinction between the multicultural society and multiculturalism. Multicultural society, we all know, it is a fact of India and many parts of the world, where various cultural groups live together, whether peacefully or violently. But multiculturalism is a sort of normative device to ad- to 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 educate their relations. So I think a multicultural society may be may accept multiculturalism or may not accept multiculturalism and think about some sort of some version of secularism to negotiate the conflicting identities, conflicting cultural identities. So I am not going into details of which sort of secularism is required, but I will go to the third one, that is the interculturalism. Interculturalism came out with the understanding of the limitations of the multiculturalism, and it accepted the difference. It is accepted that there are different cultural groups with their different cultural practices, but it accepted their rights and claims with limitations and pleaded for some sort of uh, recourse to their their dialogue among cultural groups to lead to some sort of pragmatic understanding of of acceptance of certain national policies, as well as some sort of understanding among the local people. So this way the interculturalism tried to mm, mm, make a in between. It is some sort of a in between thing between this globalism, this assimilationism, as well as multiculturalism. It is in between, and they try to mm, do and to get the best of both the worlds. But again, the problem comes that there is no interface for intercultural dialogue. And just like interreligious dialogue, intercultural dialogue has got not much meaning and progress. We just talk and talk, and then again there is a problem of representation. Who will represent which cultural group? Is there any method of uh, giving representation or the elites to negotiate on the basis of mm, their cultural communities? It is also not possible. So there is a lot of literature has also come under the interculturalism, mm, but I think this is also very problematic. There is not much time left for me, so now I come to the last one, that is the transculturalism. And I must say that in my whole understanding and study, I have found transculturalism as the most appropriate model for inter addressing the cultural identity conflicts. And here I will say a few things about transculturalism. That it is not a very new idea. It was given by Oritich, I think, in 1940, and there uh, he and after that other thinkers also, that Welsh Wolfram Wells is also a very renowned thinker in this area. They said, and I accept that this failure of assimilationism, multiculturalism, and interculturalism is because of the old understanding of the notion of the culture. That when we accept culture as a closed ball, which has got some sort of no entry point or something like that, then this whole area of cultural exchange is very, very limited. And when we accept that every culture has got some sort of foreignness in it, then the whole idea of culture is no longer that which may lead to some sort of hard, closed, non-negotiable identities. So they said that this idea of culture is again is according to them is not only unserviceable in this modern globalized world, but it is also very, very dangerous, because this leads to identity conflicts. So once we accept foreignness, and this is reality, if we go by our and see deeply into our way of life, uh, which is now we can say culture, is having so many elements which we have taken from outside, right from our food, clothing, as well as beliefs. And once we accept that enlightenment values are also to be the part of our human cultural heritage, so then we will have to combine them with our ancient cultural values, and try and must reject some of the hierarchical exploitative things in our past. So this way, this transculturalism accepts foreignness within and without. And this understanding of culture leads to a sort of practical, pragmatic device to negotiate the conflicting identities, because then no cultural identity is foreign to us, and we are always open, uh, ready to dialogue, ready to accept, ready to reject. So this way we can proceed. And I think this can be the future cultural response to the globalization process. Though it is normative, I know it is may not be acceptable to those who believe in aggressive nationalism based on cultural identities of the past, but this is the answer, in my opinion, and one must not equate it with cosmopolitanism, one should not say that it will lead to some sort of homogeneity. And this is very, very important. And with this, I will finish my talk by stating that it is the notion of culture is more like a river. It is not like a stem. So river can is a movement, and it accepts, it rejects. It has got its own way of purifying itself. So this sort of adaptability, which was the part of Indian culture, real heritage, it is also there. And once we accept the transcultural perspective, then the metaphor will be, I can say, just a minute, that this, when we use a design in a sweater, in pullover, we have got various threads, and then we design, create a design in for that. So in this transculturalism, some threats may come from our past, and some threats may come from outside also. And with that, we can create a new design, a new cultural identity, which will be more will be global as well as local. It will not be a homogeneous identity, or some sort of, you can say, flat identity. It will have its local color. It will have a cultural identity of our own, but it will be open to all sort of influences. So I think with this conclusion, I stop here, and I expect that people may think about it, and may think about it as a solution to the cultural conflict. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you very much, Alok ji. It was lovely, as usual, to hear you. He started with the globalization and the challenges that it brings, the benefits. He started with how a local artisan can present things across the globe, his products, and then make it more global. And then moved on to how the market controlled our lives and the challenges that it naturally throws to our self identity. So, the natural response, which he has been emphasizing on and off, the natural response of the self is to seek solace in the primordial religious or tribal or cultural uh, identities as a solace to resist this onslaught which falls from the global. And then he moved on to the dangers that are involved in it. He spoke about, and then the various types. He has touched almost everything, and every other sentence promoted opportunities for discussion. The challenges that we have multiple identities. When I go to the office, then if I don't wear any religious mark, well, I have one identity. And the gravest thing is that there is this conflict that happens in the individual. As an epistemologist, I'm worried about the doxastic incoherence that creates in the individual as a result of this multiple identities. Let that stay probably at the discussion. And how the global market slowly lay its hands on our it. Apparently it looks as though that it is all about the market and the commodities, but soon we realize that it has already lays its hands on the culture, the very self itself, and makes us lead a life which is authentic. An authentic life has been made impossible. And how far it is safe to seek solace in the ancient religious slash cultural slash tribal roots, which he was again and again referring to. And then he spoke about the different conceptions of culture. We heard a lot of Amartya Sen. Yeah, that was lovely. Uh, though I'm no fan of Amartya Sen, but nevertheless, it's nice to read him. So, culture as a closed box, and then culture as something historical and different versions of culture, and how the critical view of culture is very significant. He quoted Kalidasa, Purana Mityedina Sadhu Selva. And nowhere, anyone for that matter, has never taught us in the tradition that culture has to be preserved as in a mummified form. And the beautiful analogy that he gave was that of a flowing river. That is a famous, I mean, the favorite analogy for me also. What is unique about religion is that it adapts, as he has said, and also changes the places where it flows. Not only that, it assumes innovative, novel forms as it moves from the mountain ranges to the plains. It assumes different forms. It flows differently, assumes different forms. And also, it changes the places through which it flows. So that indeed is the culture, the flowing river, not a stagnant water. And then he spoke about multiculturalism and his favorite version of transculturalism, which he believes as the best to negotiate with the dangers that are involved. And thank you very much. I'm sure there are already several hands being raised. Over to Dr. Ghosh, Ranjit Ghosh. Yes. Please be brief with your questions and then.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Nair. Dr. Tandon has given very lucid exposition of globalization, and it will definitely lead to so many questions. But I have two pinpointed questions. One question and the other one is a suggestion. The first one is regarding the global identity. Now, I believe that global identity. Uh, am I audible, madam?
You are very much audible. Please go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I believe that global identity is not in conflict with our local and national identity, because it is not the case that it is a hierarchical something that from local we go to national and from national to global, but it is just the other way around. There's some disturbance. Yeah. In this context, at the last portion of his lecture, he said that transculturalism. So, should we take it in that way that transculturalism is a requisite for the global identity? This is the first question. And the second one is,
Kindly repeat your question. There was a call, I could not listen.
yeah.
Please.
So my problem is with the global identity, because you see global identity is an abstraction like globalization itself, because globalization we talk about and discuss it is as a societal process. So but identity of something cannot be formed in that way, because our we are bounded with our local identity and then the national identity, and then these days we are talking about global identity. So that doesn't mean that they are in conflict with each other. This is the first thing. And as you have suggested that transculturalism is a requisite for global identity, if we accept that, then it is all right, because transculturalism will help us to form the global identity. This is one question. And the other one is regarding our culture, because the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So, how would you say that this concept of Upanishad is different or similar to the process of globalization? Because if you take globalization in the Western sense, it is primarily an economic concept, the process of the liberalization process of the economy, and that is globalization. But how would you place Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam in such a framework? These two short questions. Thank you.
May I answer?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. Uh, in my talk, I have not talked about global identity. I have not talked about cosmopolitanism. I am talking about transculturalism, which retains in itself some part of the local identity, but it is open to the influences of outside, of other cultures also. There is no global culture as such, and globalization process has not led to a global culture. Now what we are witnessing is localization. So native cultures are resisting that onslaught of global globalization. And globalization in its present form is asymmetrical, I said. It is unjust. It is unjust to, uh, you can say, many societies, to people, to downtrodden. It is run by the aim of the purpose of profit of transnational corporations. So we cannot take it as an ideal form of world civilization. It need to be modified. It need to be changed. It need to bring some sort of justice discourse in it. So the whole idea of transculturalism is the idea not of global identity, and the identity which globalization is fostering is that of a consumer. This consumerist identity is not supposed to be the ideal identity of human being, which Srikala Nair himself herself said that this does not lead to authentic life. One, and again the question about Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is very interesting for me, because for me, the notion of culture is not restricted to the few slokas of the sacred text only. For me, culture is not only the perspective, not only the what we call commitment, not only the statement of the ideals, it is also how these ideals are lived in society. Only when they are implemented in the society and the society practices them, then it becomes real culture, living culture. And that living culture is not the uh, written pieces of the or the selection from the text. So we talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, but I myself cannot say that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam represents Indian culture, because with the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam as an ideal, we practiced hierarchical caste system for centuries. So it cannot be said to be the notion of Indian culture. Indian culture has got many layers, and this influence I have not talked about the Indian culture because of this paucity of time. But here we have got influences right from the pre modern history. We have got Sindhu Ghati civilization, we have got Aryan civilization, then there were invaders from all the sides, Shakhun, Kushan, Yunanis, and after that, the Islam, Muslim, then Britishers. So our culture has got many layers. It cannot be identified with single ideal which was not practiced in, may have been practiced earlier, but it is not historical fact. So this type of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is neither practiced here, not it is practiced anywhere in the world. So this globalization has got nothing to do with that, I think. Thank you.
Oh, the division between the text and the praxis, very valuable point. Over to Dr. Srinivasan Krishnamurthy.
Yeah, good evening to all. Thank you very much, Professor Srikala Nair, for giving me an opportunity to ventilate my feelings on this subject. I immensely, pleased with the presentation given by Professor Alok Tandon ji on globalization, and I spoke very, lucidly about the multiculturalism, globalization, multiculturalism, and then the interculturalism and transculturalism. It's all very sweet to hear, but then it's very difficult to practice, in my opinion. Why he says, I have two valid points. The first one is, supposing we have silently, accepted globalization in many areas, in many fields, like science and technology, merchandise, and the meteorological departments, and other areas like learning languages, arts, and other things. Unfortunately, if you compare the Western culture, especially the American culture, of family traditions, it is pretty difficult to accept the same in Indian culture, which has got basic roots as ethics. It is ethic based. So it is not possible to accept their culture immediately, but perhaps, who knows, that even after some 50 or 70 years, we might be willing to accept their culture of dating and marriage and then divorce and other things. But here it does not happen because we believe in Sanatana Dharma. And speaking about the Sanatana Dharma, I am reminded when
So
we are
please come to
talking
the
about,
question. Please come to the question. Can you please come to the
yeah, the
question?
question is, how would you solve the problem of Western culture, including into Indian culture, number one. Number two, what is your explanation about the Dravidian culture who are dead against our own, I mean, uh, Sanatana Dharma? These are the 2 points which I would like to ask. If he is able to give this explanation, I am very happy about it. Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you for your questions. Uh, we must make a distinction between the cultural relativity and the universalism of the science. So, scientific thought, I'm not talking about technology, but the scientific theories thought they have proved themselves to be universal, more or less. So, I am not a subscriber to the Eastern and Western sciences. I am a subscriber to the universal sciences. And we have seen what is done that this medicine, this which was developed as effective in Delhi. It is not that it served the purpose. So, this universal knowledge of science has got not much to do with the culture, in my opinion. Second thing is, who I never said, I never claim, and I never propose that we must leave our good traditions and accept the bad traditions of the West. If we have values and we know that modernity has got a darker side to developed countries, they are the ideals. Darker side of modernity, which was very much discussed, and we can discuss in mm, some other time, that it leads to some sort of alienation, isolation, anomie, disenchantment, and all that. And because of the strong family support system in India, we actually see that. But who says that with the acceptance of liberal globalization, capitalist liberalization, we will not go in the same manner? Because the trend in India is also toward individualism, and we have seen many cases between sisters and brothers now. So family is again under threat. So I am not a votary of Americanization. I am not a votary of Westernization. I simply say that you accept what is living in your tradition and what is rejected. and
Oh, thank you.
according to
Uh,
criteria, acceptance and
Has,
acceptance of
thank
the
you.
I'm not sure
Can Dr. Srinivasan please mute your mic?
I'm not sure about the Dravidian culture, so I keep silent on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ananya, do you have a question? Uh, because she was coming onto the screen on and off. The younger folks, after all, this is your forum. Grant, do
Yeah,
you have a question? Yeah.
Yes, I have
I was.
a question. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Professor, for joining us for our meeting here, and thank you for everyone else for being here. So I'm always humored by when anyone's talking about culture and history, just to know, what sort of fallacy you're presenting when you start to mention specific points of particular traditions in any culture. How far back are you going to go in time? So the two categories you gave prior to hybridization were discovery and the historical method of looking into culture. And I always find that when someone really entertains the historical elements of their own culture, it is a method of discovery. That the further back they go into the tradition, the more they start to discover and bring to present the homogeneity, the homogeneity of every tribal culture across the world. So that being said, to give an example, if someone were to speak about the traditions of Diwali, or even any wedding ceremony, and you were to speak about the different traditions involved in each of these celebrations, and ask the reasoning behind, why do you do it like this? Why are these things said? Why do you wear this type of outfit? Can anyone really answer to a specific point, why these things are part of that tradition? The further back you go, everyone eventually relies on the tribal conditions of elemental features. So the earth, food, water, air, survivability. And I feel like that's really with the point that you're making as far as the tribal equality that everyone has in their culture. I feel like the new globalization that we're moving toward in that aspect is the equality of regional dependencies. So that's what every tribal culture eventually relied on was, if there was a drought going on in their region, or if this sort of food was available at that time, a lot of the traditions were, sort of built around these sort of qualities. And I feel like that is the big
What is your
equalizer.
question, sir?
No, so I'm asking about, have you considered the modern globalization as a form of equality in the sense of regional dependencies? So when you're talking about, cultural identity, even though we're separate, you're thousands of miles away from me, we're still equally dependent on our region. Or when the sun comes up here, it's a different time than it comes up to you. So based off of that, our cultural identity is dependent on our localization, regardless how much globalization and consumerism we might be able to gather. We're still equally dependent on our regional.
Okay, you have got me wrong. I must say, I talked about localization, which is taking place. I talked about transculturalism, in which many threats come from our past, from our region, from our local cultural practices. So I do not subscribe to any sort of global culture. Globalization as an economic process is there, but it is not just, it is not equal, it is it has got its own you can say unjust economic policies. So that cannot be the ideal of my version of cultural identity. And it is true, and as you said, that our identities are very much related to our local and regional backgrounds. But I always say and still say that tradition is not identical to culture. And this debates sometimes else. I think
No,
this
and that's why I
whole
made the
idea
comment
of
of when it comes to
identifying
the
tradition with culture, I think is wrong. Culture is also futuristic. It is also a vision. If you say our vision is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it will be helpful. But if we say that in our tradition was of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it is always problematic.
Yeah, and I'm agreeing with that by saying that the traditions aren't a part of our culture. That you can go back as far as you want in tradition, and we could speak about that forever, and we would always be finding conflict in that. But the part where we wouldn't find conflict is your dependency on your region for your survivability. And what I mean by region is not the local traditions, but the elements based off your survivability: clean air, clean water, food that's available in that region. That's what
So,
I'm talking about, is the global culture is your dependence
problem
to have
is the
food where you're at.
capitalistic globalization, the capitalism which follows the policies, economic policies for profit. It has led to lot of environmental crisis throughout the world. So this is not the development which we aspire for, but we are caught in a process, and where uh, we are discussing how to negotiate our cultural identities. I am not talking about here the alternative version of globalization, alternative version of global economic development. That is a different issue. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And are there any further questions from the young? Uh, if not, then I'll give those who have already raised questions a second chance. But before they have a second chance, I wish the youngsters participate in the discussion, because these are, the living issues that you'll have to, I mean,
Yes,
they knock
yeah,
at your door whether you,
we came to your
whether you
platform
want it or
to get
not.
some
They,
questions from the youngsters.
yeah, they invariably knock at your door whether you want them as your visitors or not. So I wish that youngsters do join in the discussion. Ramya, Bhupesh, do you have anything to contribute onto these thoughts? Are you there, Bhupesh?
Yes, ma'am, I'm there. Nothing more to contribute immediately, ma'am.
All right. What about Ramya? Ramya and others, all of you. I mean, I don't have to pick up one or the other. If
Hello, sir. Can I say
Yeah,
something?
yeah, Shafi, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So actually, first of all, it was a very well put the whole presentation. Um, I actually understood everything, and parallelly, I was kind of understanding it in a different way. In a sense where an individual identity is taking place and happening. And when you said there cannot be a common point in the past and there cannot be a common ideal point in the future to project ourselves as a culture and to go back ourselves as a culture. It is also true for the individual self. Because we know this is a very common thing in even in academic philosophy. There are like Nietzsche and Derrida. And if we take all the anti-identitarian thinkers or the post-structuralist or postmodern thinkers, we know that there are many methodologies with which we understand the state of flux in which the identity of the self is in. But the thing is, I think it is more difficult to actually come to come to terms with the group identity as that is where I think all these questions which is in a comparative mode, we are comparing we are using the terms they and us. The moment we say we and them, it is already arbitrary and creating a division, a binary before the actual. Uh, we are creating an arbitrary division based on what we see in the media or what we hear as a what is advertised to us. For example, we all think that American police eat donuts and they throw the donuts away before they go for the when the call comes. This is something we see in the movies. Okay, actually, and the West, the some people think Indians break into dance when we feel love, as if it is a real thing which is happening here. So this is all popular culture, mass media enunciated, and that is one thing that is very much giving imagination to what the other is all about. The ideal other for them and us. This creates the binary, and there is this political narrative where political leaders can take you know uh, can manipulate people to of course the vote bank politics, so they can manipulate people into groups very effectively by creating or possibly projecting a kind of group trauma and a threat of the other, and there is an opportunity to give security. So this invention of the enemy is also another thing, which is so these two things: the mass media, the movies, the novels, and the political narrative. These two things has created a kind of combination of the idea of the other within every individual self, and I think it is very difficult to look through this kind of given idea of the other. So I don't know what it will take to look through this givenness. So apart from the understanding of it, I haven't still convinced myself of what could be the actual answer to this. Whether I mean there are many thinkers which I think has really touched the core, like Jiddu Krishnamurti, who again and again talks about the self and the collective self, and what is what the what tremendous amount of attention one needs to transcend this idea of time, and the comparative mind. So I don't know whether to talk it about in a mystical sense or in a philosophical sense. Whatever the antithesis for this is, I'm not sure of. But you have excellently, explained the complexities of this dilemma of the identity. That's all I have to say.
Yes.
Thank you for extended comment. I just want to say two things. First one is you have very well taken the whole mass media as well as this social media nowadays can be used, and it is being used to create an you can say antagonistic other. And this threat I talked about with aggressive nationalism. If you go back to the when it was not so powerful, but if you go back to Second World War history of Germany, even there, this propaganda, that name I am missing, who was the in charge of propaganda in Hitler's time, that led to
Goebbels.
lot of,
It was
huh?
Goebbels, sir. Goebbels.
Yeah, Goebbels. So it led a lot of hate towards Yahudis and created a sort of enmity between Germans and the Yahudis that resulted into the Holocaust, and for that they still repent. So you are very you are correct in your understanding that this mass media, as well as other channels of today, which are very effective because of this development of technology, can lead to, you can take WhatsApp University, can lead to some sort of fake news, some sort of constructed vision, some sort of false information, and our youngsters can be very much influenced by them if they are not going to study themselves the, the history. So history is a place where it is very difficult to bring out the truth. It is always colored with ideological background of the historians. But you have to be very cautious. But one thing I would like to point out, which I missed in my lecture, that the the notion of actual culture representing a community or a nation is very much dictated by the powers of the time. We have got various traditions in our country, many types of philosophies, many types of various diversities, but the powerful creates from them a sort of model of culture which suits them. And this happens throughout history. So the powers, those who rule the countries, they use culture. There is a relationship between culture and power. So these powerful groups use their culture by constructing a particular vision of their past. And that is very dangerous. Must have heard about things being deleted from history books, things being added to the history books. So what is this? So this way, a particular version of the past is constructed, and this creates the idea of the antagonistic other and creates some sort of sense of humiliation in people. And this sense of humiliation leads to urge to take revenge and to set the history right. So this sort of authoritarian, fascistic thing has happened in history in Germany, and it is may happen in many countries, including ours also. So this danger of culturalism, this danger of culture being hijacked and manipulated by the political groups is a real danger. And that's why I am very much concerned about the cultural identity. But I am very cautious about its construction by the powers of our time. Thank you. And again, when you talk about J. Krishnamurti, this is a very different topic because Krishnamurti is not concerned about this sort of disclosed identities. But the thing is, Krishnamurti and other people, these are mystics. Mystics are very few, either in India or abroad. And these people can transcend any identity. For them, identity is somewhat the restriction for their self-realization. And that is true. But our common people, they are not mystics. They don't have mystical experience. They live by, as Ranjit Goya or somebody was saying, their tribal identities, their closed religious identities, their national identities. So we have to intervene. We have to go there and make them more self-aware, more rational, more, you can say, loving towards other. This way, the actual social problem is to address. Krishnamurti was there. I was here with you. Once I was in Krishnamurti Center, Varanasi, and I was walking on the path on which Krishnamurti used to walk in the morning. And I had with me one engineer and one doctor. Suddenly it came to my mind a question. I said, if you have to choose between Krishnamurti with the unfreedom of India, Krishnamurti never fought for India's freedom, and Gandhi and freedom of India. Whom will you choose? No, not even a second took place. Both said Gandhi. And both were the devotees of Krishna. So you must see the limits of mysticism and limits of mystics. No follower of Krishnamurti could become another Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti had to say in the end that nobody understood me. So we should be very, very careful about taking these people as models for our day-to-day social problems. That's why I say the social and political philosophy should not neglect. This realization process is there, but it is not open, and the general public is not capable of reaching there. Where will be no problem. It is just like you say Advait, okay, but where is Advait in practice? So this type of questioning is to be done. Thank you.
Huh,
Thank you,
lovely.
sir.
That was a great discussion. I enjoyed it. So, if there are no further questions, then can we close, Bhupesh?
Just one additional comment with what you're saying. If New Delhi has extremely polluted air, are you saying that the cultural identity of India that has raised this issue, or is this a political propaganda based off of consumerism that has caused the issue of pollution? Or is it the cultural identity of Indian culture that's caused that issue?
Friend, this environmental degradation is caused not by culture. It is caused by the industrialization, the rampant industrialization. And the countries like India, who are developing, who are trying to become developed countries, they run the risk of degrading their environment. And just because developed countries have developed techniques, as well as they have transferred the old technologies to developing countries, so this sort of problem is there. The cultural point is one cultural point I would like to point out, that why do we accept the model of good life propagated by the industrialized West? If we accept that we must have the same standard of living as those who are living in the West, then we are all doomed, including the West, because the resources of the earth, air, water, they have been unjustifiably used by the developed countries. And they say that now you are creating pollution. So these countries say, why should we not? We will also do the same thing, and we will that will lead to pollution. So this is the cultural point, is that we have accepted the role model, the successful life, the good life, which is more a consumerist lifestyle of the West. So for me, if somebody asks what is the solution of this environmental
No,
crisis,
not the solution, but the conflict, the root of the conflict,
conflict
where
will
you mentioned
remain.
that it was about cultures.
Why not conflict? This is not a cultural conflict. There is a cultural point, but once we accept to industrialize, this has happened in the West, it will happen in India too. Degradation. It is not that the factory chimney will not throw out carbon dioxide in Paris and not in Paris, only in Delhi. It has happened in the West. It will happen in India. So that is had got nothing to do with you can say the adoption of cultural practices of the West. That is there. So that point is important in the sense that two things we have to be very careful about. that is the copying the West and becoming somewhat slave to our past. So both ways we have to be very careful. Thank you.
The two dangers that one should beware of, that is, be the slave to the past and also copying the West as our role model. Lovely. You sound a lot Gandhian. I wanted to join the discussion at several points, but I resisted because
You are
being
welcome. You are welcome. And you can also call me later. You are a friend.
yeah,
Your
because we
liberty.
close by 7:30, 7:45. We have time is one god that we really see, so I respect the time. And
Can take
so
it 15 minutes and we can have a good discussion. Come out with your questions. I
later
will
from
be quite,
yeah
because
later
I am
from yeah.
very unpleased that our youngsters have not asked any questions when they were
Oh, oh,
in
couple of
Bhubaneswar.
them have joined. Yeah,
Other
couple of
fellows,
them
they
have
were
joined the discussion.
enthusiastic.
Uh, yeah.
So I thought they will come out with some new questions, which we might ourselves cannot imagine, because the
Very
new
true.
generation.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, are there any further questions? As Dr. Tandon said, that time shouldn't be a bar. We can have the discussion. No worries about it. If not, if there are no further questions, Bhubesh.
Professor Nair, you see, what I have got from Dr. Tannen's discourse,
Yeah.
the crux of the matter is not the culture we live in, but the culture we live for.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
has made this distinction, and the culture that we live in is really problematic, because we always experience the thing. But when we are thinking about the futuristic situations, then culture we live for will be more pertinent. Thank you.
That was one of the insights of the talk. Deepti ji.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Shrikala, and thank you, Tandon ji, for this lovely talk. Because right now we were speaking about the futuristic, the culture living for. I thought I might as well make my point. I was also aware of the time, and so I was, actually restricting myself from giving any comment. But now that it has been opened, just quickly a comment, not really a question. I was just thinking that when you talk about the culture we live in and the culture we live for, and the futuristic way of looking at culture, that's really very valuable. But I was thinking that the relation or the temporality of culture, to use a sort of Heideggerian way of looking at it, it's quite complex. So the culture we live in is in a way based on the culture that was the past, yeah, and what we want to be in the future. And many a times, even the revivalist in a way can claim that they are futuristic because they want to revive the past for the sake of future. So just saying that we have to be futuristic about culture and the way we look at it, and the way we want to build our culture, it may not be enough to say that we have to be futuristic, because every whatever types that you have talked about, everyone will say that this is what we want to be in future. But as you yourself had said in one of your answers, that people construct the past the way in which they want, because they want to achieve something in future. And that's precisely what I just wanted to point out, that the relation between the past, present and future is very complex, very complicated. So maybe saying that the futuristic conception of culture is better, though I agree with it, I find it simplistic. We need to put some more flesh, some give it some more substance. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you, sir.
Uh, I suppose you are Deepti Gangwane.
uh,
She
yes,
is.
sir, I am Dipti Gangavani.
Oh, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me.
Thank you,
You are
thank
a
you. Thank you for giving me this chance.
no. You asked for the link, and you are my old dear friend. Though I
Yes,
met
yes.
you only once in my life,
I
but
know,
that
I know.
relationship continues.
Of
That
course,
love
sir.
relationship I still remember.
Yes.
when we met in bird philosophy meet in Pune.
Right. N.K.
Yeah,
Devraja.
yeah. NK. So you have your point is very well taken, I must say, and this whole idea of futuristic also comes from my background
Hmm.
because I have been I did my PhD on Sartre, and
Oh.
for Sartre, man is not what he is, man is what
Hmm.
who
Yes.
he should be. So this futuristic thing is always there in me, and in my discussion, I have rejected this idea of fundamentalism,
Right.
revivalism, and on certain grounds.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it is true that any revivalist, any fundamentalist, they just try to project a future, but that projection of future is their own construction of the past. That you just
Right.
have to accept. So that's why we see lot of differences among Indians about Indian culture. uh, in Islam also
Hmm.
there are Devbandis, there are Barelvis, there are
Hmm.
there are those who go for jihad, Talibanis. So they all construct, and they just say they are fighting for the future. Some people are trying to bring the God's kingdom. They say they are doing the divine duties. So this whole sort of confusion is there, very much there. That's why I talked about the notion of culture to be separated from the notion of religion itself. Though it is difficult, up to now, the societies, the religion was at the center of culture. Now the world is changing. What we see that technology is taking or replacing religion in many ways. So the whole notion of culture has to be at least somewhat principally distant from the idea of religion. It is my take.
Hmm.
Unless that is done, we are we are always susceptible to this sort of revivalist, fundamentalist hold, taking hold of the whole of the. This is my answer, but I know this is not. Thank you, Deep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, please go ahead. Romabati,
Good
Ms.
morning.
Romabati.
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening, sir. So I have a question for you, and that is like you talk about globalization, then you talk about this what you call as transculturalism, which you think is the most appropriate response to resolve this intercultural conflict. So I see that more as a response to the conflict that arises between the country, India, and in response to the threat that comes from the outside country. So how about the threat that exists in between the culture of our own country, especially I'm talking about culture that we have in Northeast and for example in Manipur where all the cultures are very close knitted, but some of you must be knowing that we have conflict. We are a victim of conflict now. So, how do you respond to that, sir?
This is a difficult question for me to respond because we know that India is a land of cultures. It is not a single unified culture, I must say. And especially in the Northeast, when you go there, we find a lot of uh, difference in cultural practices compared to the North mainland, North India, and all that. So, but again, the same notion of cultural identity, the closed notion of tribal cultural identity is to be given up. Unless we are ready to give up that, I think there cannot be a solution. Because in Northeast, even in Shillong, I was there for many days. I found there are three tribals: Khasi, Jaintia, and Garo. So they all fight against each other, and there were many communal conflicts. But somehow or other, what we need till people come out of their closed identities, what we need a strong secular state which can educate between the followers of various religious communities. And this secular principle of statecraft, I'm not talking about the secular way of living in society. I am talking about the secularism as a practice of the statecraft with a principled distance from the religious communities or religions. That is most important for a country like India, where religious communities are diverse and they fight against each other. Once state becomes partisan, then it is doomed. There's no way out. And my personal opinion is that this is the real crux of the problem in Manipur and Northeast. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. And I presume that we are done with. We have crossed the time. And now, may I request Ms. Saumya to deliver the word of thanks?
My humble pranam to one and all. It is indeed my great pleasure to propose the vote of thanks at the close of the session, organized by Global Forum for Young Philosophers, the youth wing of ISSS. First of all, I take this opportunity to thank our lovely ma'am, Professor Srikala M. Nair, the director of the International School for Sri Shankaracharya Studies and head Department of Philosophy, SSUS Kaladi. Thank you, dear ma'am, for your inspiring introduction about the speaker and the theme. Thank you so much, dear ma'am. Indeed, today's lecture on globalization and cultural identity was really a fruitful one. Well, it's my privilege and pleasure to thank Professor Alok Tandon for your intellectual lecture and scholarly words. Thank you so much, sir. And I express my sincere thanks to all the senior professors, faculties from the various departments for joining us and raising questions during the discussion. Thank you so much. And I also thank Dr. Bhubesh Goyal for your nice words of welcome. Thank you, Bhubesh. Last but not least, I express my hearty thanks to all the other participants, research scholars, those who are present here. Once again, thank you so much, one and all. Good night.
That brings the end of the day.
Thank you, one and all. Happy New Year to all my young friends who kept silence. And I hope that they will come out and
Oh,
raise questions as a philosophers.
many of them have discussed. Many of them have discussed. At least
Okay,
three,
then
four people
because
have
this trend has to be given
discussed. Has to be kept.
priority.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Shikalaji. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Thank you,
Pragya.
Alok
Thank
ji.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you and New Year, Chandu sir.
Okay, thank you.
Happy
Thank
New
you,
Year. Happy.
everyone. Good night and Happy New Year to you all.
Bye. Good night. Good night.